The movie opens on Saturday, June 21st, 1941, in the city park of Brest. We are introduced to a 15-year-old musician named Sasha Akimov, who is serving in the 333rd Rifle Regiment of the Red Army at the Brest Fortress. Sasha lives with his older brother Andrey after losing their parents in the Spanish Civil War. He has an affection for a girl named Anya, who is the daughter of Lieutenant Andrey Kizhevatov. The scene then cuts to the Brest train station, where a crowd of residents are seen rushing to board trains in order to leave. Turns out, there is a rumor that the city will soon be attacked by the German Nazi troops. A commissar named Efim Fomin also arrives at the station, only to discover that he is unable to bring his family to Brest due to a shortage of train tickets. Meanwhile, another officer named Gavrilov talks to the officer of the NKVD Special Department, Lieutenant Weinstein, expressing his concern about the readiness of the fort's defenses should an attack come. He points out that if the Germans attack them, they will be trapped and will not be able to get out of the fort. Moreover, the soldiers in the fort numbered around 8,000 people, including the wives and children, would be difficult to evacuate. However, Weinstein does not take the matter seriously, which causes Gavrilov to become furious, prompting him to walk away. Later, in the middle of the night, thousands of Nazi Germans infiltrate the Brest train station under the disguise of the Soviet Union Army. As the first step of their plan, they cut off electricity and water supply before starting to surround the fort. At 3:58 a.m. in the morning, the German forces begin their invasion of the Soviet Union. The fortress gets subjected to heavy bombardment by German artillery and Stuka aircraft, killing many Soviet soldiers and civilians. This unexpected attack sets panic among the civilians, prompting them to run for their lives. One after another, the buildings are destroyed, causing pandemonium. By 6:30 a.m., the German troops start to move towards the fortress, capturing and killing hospital staff and patients. Terrified, the civilians try to get out of the fort through the north gate, but they are also gunned down. Fomin then takes command of the defenders around the Kulm gate and has the soldiers take their positions on the windows. He orders his troops not to let the enemy soldiers cross the bridge in front of the fort. Simultaneously, Gavrilov organizes defenders around the eastern fort in response to the unexpected and devastating attack. Elsewhere, the NKVD border guards, under command of Lieutenant Kizhevatov, act on repelling a German sortie into the fortress. Despite being low on ammo, he orders his troops to attack the enemies with their makeshift weapons. After an intense battle, Kizhevatov and his soldiers are eventually able to repel a batch of German soldiers. However, in the process, several of their own men are killed. On the other hand, an undercover German soldier pretends to be a lieutenant and approaches Weinstein in an attempt to undermine the defense of the 132nd Independent NKVD Convoy Battalion barracks. He instructs Weinstein and his soldiers to split into small groups and abandon the fort. However, the disguise does not go smoothly, as Weinstein manages to uncover the truth due to different shoe designs. The Soviet Union Army boots have round spikes, while the German boots have square spikes. The Germans need better fashion designers. Realizing the deception, Weinstein reacts swiftly, shooting the undercover soldier to death. At the Kulm gate, Fomin notices the German soldiers crossing the bridge, holding civilians hostage. In a quick action, he orders his soldiers to wait for his signal and then walks outside, feigning surrender. While negotiating with the Germans, Fomin suddenly instructs the hostages to get down, after which his troops open fire, neutralizing the enemy and rescuing the civilians. Following this, he assigns one of his soldiers to drive to the city in order to alert their headquarters. The soldier heads out, but is shocked to discover the piles of corpses of Soviet soldiers as well as the civilians at the northern gate, causing him to retreat. He returns back to Fomin and reports that the north gate can no longer be passed. Not long after, a German military tank enters through the same gate, crushing all the corpses brutally. Simultaneously, several other military tanks enter through the eastern gate as well. Upon seeing this, Gavrilov immediately mobilizes his troops to prepare with improvised weapons and take their positions. As the enemy soldiers approach, a cannon suddenly hits one of the German tanks. Gavrilov looks around and notices that Andrey and another soldier are firing a 45mm anti-tank gun at their best speed to take down the enemy tank. However, their efforts don't last long, as one of the tanks soon locates them and blows them up, resulting in their deaths. After this, Gavrilov gives the green signal to his soldiers, prompting all of them to launch their attacks. The Soviet Union armies fight with great courage and bravery, eventually managing to finish off the German soldiers. By the end of June 22nd, the Soviet defenders are divided into groups, one force under Fomin defending the Kulm Gate, a second force under Gavrilov defending the eastern redoubt, while Kizhevatov defends the 9th Frontier Outpost, along with a group of civilians, and Weinstein holds on to the barracks of the 132nd NKVD Battalion. On the following morning, the German soldiers make an announcement for the residents, leaving them with two choices: surrender themselves or die in a hail of bullets. Sasha, who is still alive, does not believe the Germans' words and heads towards the troops of Lieutenant Kizhevatov in a building. The boy then asks Kizhevatov about Anya because he last saw her running towards her father. When the lieutenant remains silent, Sasha makes a brave decision to go out in danger in search of her. In the midst of his search, he comes across a group of Fomin's troops interrogating a German soldier. The captive soldier reveals that the city of Minsk, which was the main defense center of the Soviet Union, has already been destroyed. However, Fomin does not believe in him, as he is confident that the Soviet Union soldiers won't be defeated that easily. A short while later, an I-16 Soviet fighter aircraft of the 123rd Fighter Aviation Regiment is seen flying in the sky, which raises hope in the suffering soldiers. But just a few seconds later, the aircraft is shot down by enemy planes. The only good thing is that the pilot manages to land safely via parachute. Seeing this, Fomin's troops immediately rush to him and bring him to safety. Fomin then asks him about the situation of the headquarters and the reason why the backup has not arrived yet. In response, the pilot replies that all of their bases are destroyed and the cities have been occupied by the Nazi Germans. As a result, all the survivors are retreating toward Minsk. This grim news shatters the soldiers' hopes, realizing that they now have to fight tooth and nail against the invading Germans without any help from headquarters. In addition to their hardship, the residents face severe shortage of food and water, plunging them into great desperation. On June 24th, Fomin makes a tough decision to break out of the fort even though they have to face an overwhelming number of armed German army. He instructs his soldiers to write down the plan on a piece of paper and then pass it on to another group so that they can all act at the same time. Just then, the German troops launch another attack on Fomin's group, prompting the soldiers to retaliate hastily. Before joining in the gunfight, Fomin orders two of his soldiers to pass the breakout message to another group. Hearing this, Sasha also volunteers to join in the delivering mission, but the commander denies his request. Regardless, the boy, who has a very high spirit of nationalism, decides to carry out the mission alone. In the middle of his journey, the Nazi Germans launch their next air attack on the fort, which results in the explosion of more buildings. The soldiers assigned to deliver the message suffer severe injuries in this assault. As a result, Sasha, who somehow manages to survive the explosions, is the only hope now. As the boy makes his way to the other group, he unexpectedly meets Anya, who is now in a very weakened state. Despite their joy at seeing each other, Sasha insists he cannot take her with him right now. However, he promises to come back for her after delivering the crucial message. Upon continuing on his way, he passes through the completely overrun 132nd Battalion, along with the lifeless body of Weinstein. Despite the grim situation, the boy manages to maintain his composure and ultimately succeeds in delivering the message to Kizhevatov and Gavrilov. That night, after receiving a flare gun signal from Fomin, all three remaining groups set out from their respective places for the breakout. However, their plan does not go as expected because the Germans start shooting down all the soldiers, resulting in a massacre. After suffering a huge loss of soldiers, the Soviet Union armies are forced to retreat back to their hideouts. As the sun rises, we see a grim sight. The entire fort is filled with corpses. Realizing that they can't win over the German soldiers, Kizhevatov orders the surviving civilians, including his wife and daughter, to vacate the fortress during a ceasefire. His wife, Katya, initially refuses to leave without him, but he convinces her that being a soldier's wife, it is her responsibility to lead the other civilians out. The couple then shares an emotional hug for one last time before parting ways. At the same time, Sasha brings Anya to join the civilians. Seeing his daughter still alive, Kizhevatov runs over to her and hugs her tight. He then orders Sasha and Anya to join the group of civilians. Sasha hesitates, citing his responsibility to the nation, but the lieutenant entrusts him with the responsibility of taking care of Anya. After all the civilians make it out of the fortress, the German soldiers drop a 2-ton bomb with the intention of obliterating the entire place. In the aftermath, they start checking every nook and cranny of the fort, eradicating the surviving pockets. The defenders at Kolm Gate are forced to surrender, and Fomin is immediately executed by a German firing squad. On the other hand, Gavrilov orders his remaining men to attempt to break out individually, while he stays behind. As a result, he is apprehended as a prisoner of war and tortured brutally. In the meantime, an injured Kizhevatov and his surviving men manage to regroup in the barracks. Not long after, Sasha returns to meet them there. He claims that he managed to flee the civilian group and is here to fulfill his duty. Kizhevatov, in return, hands him the regimental colors and asks him to remember the truth about the defenders. With this, the lieutenant orders his surviving soldiers to leave, while he stays back and takes a machine gun to cover them. Despite their best efforts, the breakout proves futile, and the remaining defenders, including Kizhevatov, are killed. The only one who manages to escape is Sasha. Finally, the Brest Fortress ends up falling in the hands of the Nazi Germans. The scene then cuts to several decades later, and we see an elderly Sasha paying tribute to the memorial of Brest Fortress, accompanied by his grandson. The movie ends as he reminisces about the good old days and the memories of life before the Nazis took everything. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.